you need a piece of watercolor paper, the same as what you're painting on or will be painting on, but this is just to put your colors on, and I think also to do some, you can use this paper for your first experiment. Now, the other day I did this sky, I think 5 times before I felt it was getting in the right place. And I did it again this morning a couple more times. So I think it's worth having a piece of paper that you can call your test paper if you like. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Now, the first color, which is very straightforward and doesn't require anything adding to it, is the ultramarine. Okay, so can you find ultramarine on your palette? It's the lovely royal blue, and I'll bring my palette across so you can see. This is my ultramarine. Okay, that's the actual lump. It's royal blue. Even if it looks a bit greeny in the camera, it's royal blue. Oh. And can you make sure you've got a reasonable amount in your small well, and then mix up a wash of ultramarine? And it's sort of a mid-strength, okay? And again, I would have a scrap of paper where you can try your color out, dry it, and see what it looks like. Because, remember, these colors do tend to, they look dark when you put them down first of all, and then they dry at least 50% lighter. I think when you've done a little square of the ultramarine, you've dried it, perhaps you could just show me. So the next color you're going to mix is this tricky one, and I would really like everybody to be listening, and I'm going to show you, I think, how to do it so that we will attempt to get the same sort of mixture. Essentially, what I put in this color was, there's a number of ways you can get at it, but I did use raw sienna, and then I put a tiny amount of alizarin, I mean tiny, and a tiny amount of ultramarine, possibly slightly more ultramarine than alizarin. It's this color that's going underneath the blue, okay?
Yes.
And I think he's used it here as well, although this looks a little bit bluer than this one, but it's, it could be the printing, I don't know. So will all of us have a go at mixing this one next? Now, is Chris back in the room?
Yes, I've just come right back.
Would you please, everybody, look at the screen while I mix this, okay? Now, I've already done it here on my palette, and that's what it looks like, but I'm going to do it again, okay, so that you can see what I'm using and try and gauge the quantities. So starting with water into water into the raw sienna over here. So a reasonably strong mix of the raw sienna to start off with, not a pale looking thing. It's much easier to dilute and weaken than it is to go from the other way around. So if you all want to get some raw sienna or yellow ochre, if that's all you've got, into that one of your wells and nothing else at the moment, Now the next bit is the tricky bit, and please can you just watch? So I've cleaned my brush, and I'm now going to just touch the alizarin crimson. Oops, sorry, here in the corner, touching it, and it's powerful, this crimson, because as soon as I add it to the raw sienna, you can see it's already going sort of more orangey. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Now that's too hot. So in order to get it to what I think is the color he's used, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to wash my brush and then put the tip of it onto the ultramarine and add the ultramarine. Now watch, when you add the ultramarine to it, it goes slightly greener. If you add too much, you'll end up with a green as opposed to a browny color, which is what I would want you to have. Now I think that's probably about right. I'm going to try it out. It looks a bit different to this, but I think this is separated. So if I stir it around, it probably ends up coming back to that. So I'm going to try it out, and I want you to do the same. I want you to paint a little swatch of it somewhere, dry it, and then have a look at it against your picture and see whether it looks like the right strength and the right color. Now that's what it looks like wet. So I'm going to dry it and see what happens. Okay, you're going to tell me what I need to do to it.
Bit more ultramarine, bit more, tiny bit more red.
Yes, exactly. And then I just repeat it, just do it again. Paint another little square of it and dry it and see what it looks like, if it looks different. I don't think mine's going to look, I don't know, I'll wait and see. Right, well, I'm going to probably accept that one. It might, I think it'll work with the one I've got here. It is different to that one. It's slightly bluer. Can you see that? This is my first one. That's my second one. Very subtle, the difference, but there is a difference.
Yeah.
This is yellower. This is slightly redder and stronger. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, would you all of you please do that little square on your, you know, on your piece of practice paper, so you've got a nice record of it, and write underneath what's in it, and then I'd like you to show it to me once you've dried it. Now this last color is probably, well, possibly the trickiest one. In my case, this is this color here. Now looking at it against this looks bluer and this looks a little bit too red. But in fact, as I look, if you compare that in the picture with that one, that area of the sky has got a definite warmth about it, the blue. So I think I'll mix a new blue, a new one for this. You can then have a go. We'll all dry our swatches and we'll all compare them with what we've got in the actual image, okay? So the next one, what I've put in it, if you want to just watch me, and then you can go ahead and do it, okay? So I'm going to use some blue water. I started again with ultramarine. So the base colour is ultramarine. And I'd say a sort of mid to strongish colour to start off with. It's safer because you can always dilute it down a bit if it does appear to be too strong, but not so easy going the other way. So just the straightforward ultramarine is in there at the moment. And now I'm going to add a small, and I mean small, amount of alizarin. That's probably not enough. So I'm going to put a little bit more red in. Now this is where you've got to be careful because it will go purple very quickly.
Yes.
Ah,
So can you see that that's gone into a slightly warmer blue?
Yes.
Yeah?
yeah.
Right, now I'm going to paint a little square of it and then you can all do your mixtures in a second. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm doing this colour on here, which is that one. Now, what I've mixed up looks slightly bluer, but I'm going to leave it like that. I might just add a little bit more blue and a little bit more alizarin because I think what's making this sort of colour is the sienna underneath it. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one at that. I've made it a little bit stronger. Can you see? It's quite, this looks more purpley than that, but the reason I'm not going to do anything with it, I'm going to leave it as it is, because when you put that, as I say, the burnt sienna, the raw sienna underneath it, it will affect the appearance of the colour. It will grey it off a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so if anybody wants to show me what they've done, I'm going to put mine to one side. Now you need a clean jar of water. If you haven't got one that's clean, can you make sure you get one? I would leave it to you, but I personally decided in the end I needed a little guide for this. So I've done a couple of experiments. I basically traced around the line of the blue. Sorry. I traced around the line of the blue. So if you've got some tracing paper, you could do the same. I traced around this cut shape, the cloud shape, and I then traced it down onto my piece of, my spare test paper. The reason it's a red line is because I traced it on this piece of tracing paper. So this is the front. I turned it over and I rubbed some red chalk on the back. And then I turned it back, taped it down onto my piece of watercolour paper and drew over the line that I'd drawn initially. Put my tracing paper over my image. I traced that white cloud shape and the bottom of the blue cloud. Okay, so I traced this here, that. So it's one little line and a cloud shape. This, if it's easier and it helps you when you get your tracing paper to write front on the front of the page where you've done your tracing, then I would do it because it's easy to get into a muddle with this. turn it over and then just rub some red chalk, if you've got some, or whatever soft pastel you have handy, over the back. You can do it with just going over with your graphite pencil. That's another way of doing it. But I find it's easier to see when it's a colour as opposed to grey. But, you know, I'll leave it to you to decide. Then you turn it back so you've got it the right way up. Place it down on your watercolour paper. Tape it to your watercolour paper, and with a hard pencil, that's something like an F or an H or whatever you've got, just literally go over that line so you get an impression from the tracing onto your paper, which is what I've got here. Right? Image on your piece of paper, and you can do it a couple of times. I've actually done 3, so I've got 2 on this side and 2 on the back, because I thought I'm bound to want to try it out more than once, even though I've done it about 7 times now. So, you know, this is supposed to be a learning experience on how to do wet and to wet.